Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here, and thank you for allowing me to be one of the last to ask questions and visiting with you today. My first question, Mr. Hotchkiss, in your testimony, you mentioned that over half of young farmers say they need access to more land. Can you talk to me about the young farmers you see entering bank branches? Are you seeing any trends toward younger and first-generation farmers getting involved in farming and thereby accessing credit?
Thank you for the question. We do see young farmers, they come in. It's generally someone who is from a farm, might have been farming with their father, their uncle, their grandparents, and they're wanting to break away and start something, set their own legacy forward. And it is really a struggle. It is hard for them to get started and to obtain the credit they need without the programs that are available through either USDA, in the Farm Bill. I want to thank this committee again for proposing increased limits, separating operating from real estate, that allows enough access to credit with a guarantee behind it that can help those young farmers. The down payment assistance program is something that is going to aid those young farmers to get into the business. But as I've also said, one of the most difficult things to deal with is they'll come in and they'll talk about their operating budgets and their struggle to be able to themselves put together a reasonable operating budget because it just doesn't pencil out. The costs are so high, and so that's, to me, that's why not only is the Farm Bill so important for this year, because it brings certainty not only to the farmer but brings certainty to the financing side. And it needs to be passed. We don't need an extension. We need something that can help now and go forward. And then also, lastly, I would just say support for acre, which is a way to reduce costs, not only for young farmers, but for all farmers.
Perfect. Well, I'm going to follow up a little bit on interest rates since we're talking specific to people accessing credit and what that looks like. And we're talking about home ownership, not only purchase of land, but home ownership. A distant dream for many Americans and certainly young Americans, as we're seeing across every sector. Coming from a state with an affordable housing shortage and a homelessness crisis, the issue is top of mind for me in Oregon. Aside from those high interest rates, can you speak to the obstacles that also stand in the way of rural Americans purchasing homes?
Availability and sometimes cost. But once again, fortunately, I'll reference back to the Acre Act. It's not just ag real estate. It's residential mortgages in rural communities of 2,500 or less, and that would help reduce the interest cost and allow a lot more people to qualify for mortgages.
Okay, well, I'm going to move on just a little bit. Dr. Alan Tolley and Mr. Dunlow, thank you both for your passionate remarks earlier and, frankly, your honesty. We are repeatedly told that conditions in farm country are not great, but to hear your on-the-ground perspective as producers who are seeing the effects of low commodity prices and rising input prices, it really sends a message home. It's been noted that as the production expenses are forecast to remain high, the highest in history, producers will be forced to rely on increasingly more debt. With these added pressures, it seems at all but inevitable that the mental health of farmers and ranchers will be strongly affected for an industry that already has high suicide rates. My question for you both is, what can be done to improve mental health for our farmers and reach them before it's too late?
Thank you for the question. I certainly think that as we move through this fall and into the winter and spring, we are going to need to be able to reach out to farmers. In Minnesota, we actually have a dedicated line for farmers to call into that are experiencing some mental health concerns, and there's a series of counselors that they would be able to access. And so I would say that something to that effect is going to be important across the country.
Mm-hmm. We're seeing it more now. Mr. Dillon, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I had talking to one of my friends he had a friend that went out of farming because of financial situation, and actually he was helping talk him out of doing something like that. So I would certainly encourage this committee to move forward to advertise these numbers, these help, that someone can call and get help with.
Yeah, and for any farmer or rancher or any industry as well, when things are tough, accessing credit, paying, your families are counting on you. And that pressure on your shoulders is hard when you know that other families and their children are counting on you as well. So I'm about out of time. I did want to bring up Ag Labor Working Group that we recently had, and I was proud to be a part of that effort. And while the Ag Committee does not have jurisdiction over ag labor, we are a vested interest in meaningful reform to the ag labor workforce. So I'll hold my last question, but just know that that's on top of mind for me as well. And I thank you all for being here today and sharing your perspectives.